But first, let's delve into the headline news of the week. We are joined by the digital news editor at the Fall River Herald-News, Will Richmond. Will, how are you?
I'm good, Keith. How's it going?
Good. Very busy week in local news. Let's start out at Durfee High School. For the second time in about a week, there was an incident at the school which involved either the talk or, in this case, the posting of a photo of a firearm that was posted on social media. This was Monday morning. It forced the lockdown of the school. Parents came by. It was an anxious situation for them. For those of you people who are watching that may not have heard of the issue, give us a brief recap of what happened on Monday.
Yeah, so a photo was posted through the Snapchat social media network that showed a gun that appeared to be pretty real looking, along with the tag Durfee Life. It was not known immediately, I think, if the gun was in the school or the exact location, but it was first seen by students who brought it to the attention of administrators. Sometime after that, the administrators then placed the school on lockdown, which meant no one in, no one out, as they tried to investigate the matter. This certainly resulted in some chaotic moments, as you mentioned. Parents arrived at the school, demanding to know, where the condition of their children, if everything was safe. Eventually, police arrested a 15-year-old boy. They came to find a BB gun on him that I think they believe matched the gun that was in the photo. And he has since been charged, his identity not released because he is a juvenile. So that all happened on Monday, which also resulted in the school department's decision to strengthen the entrance policy at Durfee. So on Tuesday, students were limited to entering through the main entrance. Metal detectors, wands, metal detecting wands were used on students as they entered the building, which created its own sort of chaotic scene as it took from about 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Tuesday for all students to get into the school.
Now, as we said, this was the second incident of talk of a firearm at Durfee. Last week there was some talk on chatter on social media about a firearm, and now, as you mentioned, there was the issue with the bringing in the metal detectors on Tuesday. Still there today. Is this an instance now with the metal detectors at Durfee? We've heard about this at other high schools across the country. From what you're reporting, is this going to be maybe the norm at Durfee, keeping these metal detectors there?
Yeah, that's something we're hoping to find out as this week concludes. We know today we had one of our photographers was at the school for the opening this morning, and he reported a much smoother process. All kids were entered into the school in a timely manner. They have since allowed students to re-enter through the entrance, sort of the back entrance off of the auditorium side of the building. So that has helped to alleviate some of the crunch of all the students entering through one doorway. And at this point, the story this morning was that basically all kids were in. Those that were late were because they were late to get to school. So the process seems to be running a bit smoother. We are looking to see if this is going to be a long-term solution to this issue or a short-term solution, and see where the school takes this next.
Really, it's one of those instances where you'd love to trust the people in your community and trust the students, but unfortunately, when something like this happens, there's a balance between the freedom of students coming into the school and also the safety of the students. And that's why I asked the question: is this potentially a tipping point, which will lead to tighter security at the school? I'm sure this will come up in the next school committee meeting, which will be coming up soon.
Yeah, the committee would meet again the second Monday of November as their traditional schedule. So I'm sure it will be on their agenda. There'll be quite a discussion on what to do about safety at Durfee.
All right, we'll be following that story, I know, as you will at the Herald-News. Next, let's move to from the schools to Government Center. The City Council this week was briefed on the city budget thus far after one quarter in the 2017 fiscal year. And overall, things seem to be going as planned, except in one area. Back to trash. Looks like that at this point, the revenue from the sale of the purple bags in the city of Fall River are under expectations. Fill us in on the details.
Yeah, revenue remains under projected, which probably shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Um, at this point, it's still the city is saying that there are compliance issues and a lack of compliance enforcement, though this is probably a broken record statement just as much as the trash issue is. But in the past, they've promised more compliance, and this has been with the current administration and the two administrations prior to this one. And that still does not seem to be the case. So any hopes of making up that revenue seem highly unlikely unless anyone's going to get serious about enforcing compliance on this matter.
Now, the city had budgeted to receive about $3.2 million in revenue from the sale of the purple bags, and for the first quarter, they only collected $630,000. So it looks like they could have a shortfall of about $700,000 if the trend continues throughout the fiscal year. There's also talk that the fees for recycling are a little bit more on the city in terms of their expenses than anticipated. One would think that these numbers would have been more tightly locked in during the budget process. Was any of that asked?
Well, I think that the promises were made in the spring that compliance was going to be enforced on a much stricter basis, which would then lead to the revenue numbers on the bags increasing. So there's sort of a give and take on that aspect, but with the lack of enforcement, it leads to the lack of revenue on the bags. And then on the recycling end, the problem is becoming that the items being put in recycling are either unacceptable items, they are too dirty to be recycled. So whenever this happens and materials have to be cleaned out of the recyclable materials, that is a cost back on the city's end. So recycling has become an issue, and the city, I know, has stepped up their efforts to send out materials related to what is and what isn't recyclable lately. And so they're hoping for better compliance from residents, putting the right items in the recycling bins.
All right. Again, something we'll be following as well. All right, Will, what's coming up at the paper over the next few days?
Yeah, this weekend we're taking a look at a part of the opioid problem, in which I think many people may wonder about, is sort of what happens when someone enters the criminal justice system and they are opioid addicted. So we kind of look at the different branches. What would happen if you end up at the Bristol County House of Correction? What happens when you kind of go before a judge and you're a known drug user? As well, we take an inside look at the city's drug court and how that operates.
All right, well, sounds good. We'll talk again next Thursday.